Good evening. My name is Siobhan Holmes, and I would like to share with you a project I completed for my interpersonal communication class for Liberty University. There are accompanying slides to this presentation, so in order for you to move from one slide to the other, I will say slide. I would appreciate it if you would change the slide at that point. Okay, the first slide I'd like to share with you is the table of contents. These are the few things that we'll be going over in this presentation. I'd like to go over my personal overarching goals, what it means to enlarge the conversation in the context of achieving my overarching goals, my personal background, personal behavior blend, interpersonal communication barriers that I actually experience, possible solutions to some of these interpersonal communication barriers. I'd also like to share some resources with you and strategies for better communication, action plan, and then of course my resolution conclusion and a reference slide. Next slide, please. So the first thing I would like to talk to you about today is my personal overarching goals. So an overarching goal really is what I would like to accomplish after this class to make myself a better communicator. The first one is become a level 1 or better than current disposition listener. A level 1 listener is referenced as a person who refrains from judging the speaker and who places themselves in others' position to become more empathetic, being aware of and present in the moment, and acknowledging and responding to the speaker, using verbal and nonverbal cues to show the listener that I'm involved in a conversation. Those are just some of the characteristics of a level 1 listener. Another overarching goal, a couple of my other overarching goals are also to provide a safe environment for the speaker, be assertive when the situation dictates, but also allow the individual to fully articulate their thoughts without interruption, contribute the right amount of self-disclosure into conversations. I've found that these are some areas that I struggle with. So these are some goals I'd like to achieve through this course and through further studies. Next slide, please. Okay, so basically, this is it in reference to enlarging the conversation. You might wonder, what does that really mean? Well, basically, enlarging the conversation means that we all are contributing to the conversation. We're adding relevant information. We're expanding the knowledge base and improving the overall conversation. And we're creating a more effective way of communicating between the sender and the receiver, utilizing specific methods and techniques, some of which I've learned in this past 8 weeks in this course. Next slide, please. Personal background. So here are a few things about me. I'm actually a West Indian female. I was born in Guyana, Georgetown, Guyana. I moved to the United States when I was 8 years old. So I grew up in a West Indian family. With that being said, growing up in a West Indian family entails that there are a lot of responsibilities and rules that children follow. Children, adults, everybody has their specific place within this culture. And one thing that I've heard all the time growing up was that children were meant to be seen and not heard. So obviously that affected my communication skills. It affected when I was verbal and when I chose not to be. I joined the military, the United States military, and that was a totally different culture. I went from being submissive, passive, to being taught how to be very outgoing, very outspoken, and very assertive. So my personality, my character took a totally different turn. I joined the military. I'm a single mother of 3 wonderful little people. I also have a bachelor's degree in psychology, and I'm currently pursuing my master's in community counseling at Liberty University. So the next thing, next slide, please. The next thing I'd like to share with you is the temperament models of human behavior. Now, this is basically a quiz or a survey that I took in this class that helped me understand my personality much better. It's broken down into 4 distinct categories with D, I, C, and S being different sets of different focus on the individual, the person, whether you're people-oriented, you're active or passive. For my personality, next slide, please. For my results, I received actually, which was very surprising to me, was I received the D, S, and C on both graphs. This is what people expect of me. And the graph 2 was what I truly am. And it was very interesting to see that both graphs were pretty much the same. So that means that I'm actually overall, I'm very predictable. The way I am in public is the way I am in private. I'm very determined, I'm very stern, and sometimes I don't acknowledge all of my attributes, but that's something I will be working on. Next slide, please. The second survey that we took was a interpersonal communication skill test. On that, I scored 78 out of 100. According to this test, I was rated as very insightful. The results indicated that I'm fairly adapted at interpreting other people's words and actions and seeing things from their perspective. I always believed I try to be a very outgoing individual and that I try to put myself in other people's positions and try to understand where they're coming from. So these results were very telling. They actually verified or confirmed some of the characteristics that I assumed I possessed. Next slide, please. So these are a few interpersonal communication barriers that I have experienced and that I think reflect me as a person and where I need to grow. So I have a lot of listening biases. That's interrupting others when they speak, not allowing them to finish their full thought. I always try to solve people's problems, which is not necessarily always a good thing. Sometimes people just want to be heard. There's also a lot of physical barriers that we need to overcome in order to be good communicators. Things such as hunger, the temperature, just basic everyday noise, just basic everyday barriers. And then, of course, there are external distractions, the way the speaker looks, the volume that they're speaking at, time pressures, even the simple phone ringing during your conversation. And then there's semantic barriers. A lot of times we don't necessarily understand the same things. Earlier when I introduced myself, I said I had 3 little people. Did you take that as meaning that my children were dwarfs? They're not. I just refer to my children as 3 little people because to me they're my little people. So those are some basic barriers that we all face. Next slide, please. The next 2 slides cover some solutions to some of these barriers, which basic solutions: get rest before if you know you're gonna be involved with people, just get some rest the night before. Make sure you're well rested. Use positive nonverbal communication cues so that your listener knows that you're truly engaged in what they're saying. Next slide, please. The resources and strategy sides shows you some of the tools and techniques you can use to better your communication skills. Next slide. My action plan. Here's some of the things that I'd like to do in order to help me reach my overarching goals. Next slide. And then resolution, my conclusion. These are 2 scriptures that mean a lot to me because they tell me I need to stop, take some time, relax, and just listen before I speak, before I volunteer information. Again, I hope you've enjoyed my presentation. Like I said, my name is Siobhan Holmes, and this has been my presentation for my excuse me, for my interpersonal communication class for Liberty University. Thank you.